Hello. Uh, I am back from. I haven't done a live stream in a week or two, and this is actually only my second live stream. So yeah, today. I'm just kind of go over, not really go over, but it's more of like just a for fun thing because I'm new at this. Like I said, I am not a YouTuber. This is my first outing as kind of a YouTuber. The lighting is really bad right now, so I'm going to fix that. Uh, a little bit better, not by much, but whatever. So today, I'm just for fun, just kind of go over some of the movies that I like, top movies that have influenced me as a creator myself, movies that inspired me. Uh, yeah. So, and if you want to jump in any time and start listing off some of your movies, great. If not, you can just listen to what I got to say because I have nothing, nothing crazy to say. Most of my top movies are stuff that you guys have probably already seen. I'm not one of those people who likes really avant-garde stuff. I mean, I like it. I appreciate that kind of stuff, but those aren't in my top movies. There's a couple that might surprise you, but for the most part, pretty standard. I would say what the way that I categorize my favorite movies, I do it by genre. Now, I don't know if that's how you guys do it, but because I can't really say like I can put like Godfather in the same league as like Lord of the Rings. I mean, they're both great movies, but I can't really rank them above each other because they're completely different types of movies. So I prefer to just kind of put things by genre. And I think one of my go-to favorite movie of all time. I'll just start off with that one, Altered States from 1980. That was Ken Russell who directed that. In the 70s and early 60s, he'd done some pretty wild movies, a lot of surrealist stuff, and a lot of musicals. And Altered States was sort of his first, like, I would say his first mainstream movie. Probably his only mainstream movie, to be honest, because after that he just did kind of like low budget horror movies. But Altered States was the first one that really felt like a movie, a big movie. So I'm a huge fan of Altered States. I think that one kind of it signifies everything that I like out of a movie. It's got the great cinematography. It's got the great themes of like the mind being more powerful than we have any understanding about. I love the special effects are amazing for 1980. There's actually some early CGI in Altered States. I think it was like the movie with the very first instant of oh, actually no, first two examples was Alien, and then the very first example, I believe, was Star Wars, or at least like a three-dimensional thing. There could have been others before that. I think the Westworld movies might have done a little bit of that. By the way, Altered States was if not one of the first. I'll just say that it's one of the first CG examples. And then I think my favorite part of Altered States is the soundtrack, the score. That is just no score in my mind has topped that level of bombastic intensity. There's nothing really incomparatively to it. It signifies horror, drama, science fiction. It's like some electric synth in there, but also on top of instrumental. So yeah, overall, Altered States is just absolutely my favorite movie. But I would say in terms of probably lesser known movies, I mean, I wouldn't say that's like a widely known movie. In fact, I'm probably the only person I know of who finds that to be their favorite, one of their favorite movies. But I'll talk about some more movies that are less like obvious on the top tier, I mean, the lower tier of kind of public awareness. I'll get to those in a little bit. But right now, I'm just going to kind of go over some of the science fiction movies, other science fiction movies that I really like. So Altered States, I would consider that science fiction. It's sort of in a genre of its own, but whatever. So the next one under that would be, I would say, this is a hard one to kind of count because it's more of like the idea of it is Star Wars. That's an obvious one. I mean, once again, it's not quite science fiction. It kind of leans a little bit towards fantasy. with the Force, and just kind of the overall structure of it kind of feels more like a fantasy story than a science fiction story. But I digress. So I would say Star Wars as a whole would be kind of my second, and then but specifically Empire Strikes Back. Again, not a surprise. Everyone loves Empire Strikes Back. It's a cliche to say Star Wars Empire Strikes Back is the best Star Wars movie, but I haven't really like. There's not a no one has really encapsulated why that really is the best one, and I have a couple reasons why I think it's the best one. One, a lot of people say because it's the darkest of the three. Sure, it's got a kind of a downer ending, but that's not what makes it a great movie. I mean, that makes it in itself a great movie, but it's not the reason why it makes it the best movie in the series. To me, why it's the best one in the whole series is because it is the most Star Wars. It encapsulates everything that Star Wars is. The first one, it was a great introduction to the Star Wars universe. The third one, Return of the Jedi, was a great kind of continuation of that. But in a way, in my opinion, it kind of scaled back a little bit. Just think about it. In Return of the Jedi, there's only two planets, really. You got Endor and you got Tatooine. Those are only two planets you get in that story. Empire Strikes Back, you get, first of all, you get outer space. You get Hoth. You get Dagobah, and you get what was the sky planet called for the Cloud City, whatever that one was. You get all these environments. You get jungle, you get ice, you get air, you get space. You get all these kind of cool environments. But also, I think it's the best written. Like the dialogue is so clean and so snappy. It just flows. The pacing of the movie is just bam, bam, bam. Everything just keeps going and going, and then we get great characters introduction, like of course Yoda. But also, like, just the movie looks so good. It's the best looking out of all the movies too. It's better. Like Return of the Jedi is actually not as good of a looking movie as people remember. Great special effects. The cinematography is lacking. I would find like they have a lot of harsh lighting, kind of like dimmer colors. But Empire Strikes Back, you get these ripe blues and greens, and in Cloud City you got these oranges. And the camera work's always moving. These shallow depth of field, wide angle lenses, sweeping camera work. It builds the universe so much more clear. So that's why I believe Empire Strikes Back is the best. But overall, I would just say Star Wars is number 2. Number 3, I would say, is The Matrix. I think The Matrix is, again, very obvious choice, but I love The Matrix. I think it is a wonderful one of those movies. It's kind of like a Star Wars, where it just changes the whole paradigm of filmmaking. First of all, just the way it was made was completely unique. Like the camera work, a lot of wide angle lenses, a lot of jump zooms, fast camera work, super slow mo. So just the visual style of it is unique in itself, but also no one had seen anything quite like that up until that time. The idea of dealing with humans living in a simulated reality is pretty revolutionary in the 90s. So that would be number 3. Number 4, I would say, is, again, this is a duo one, because I love these movies equally, but they're in the same series, as Alien and Aliens. Those movies are just perfect to me, especially Alien. I love Aliens. Aliens was the movie that got me into filmmaking. In fact, when I first saw that movie as a kid, I was about 9 years old. That inspired me to pick up a video camera and shoot my first little movie. It was a time travel movie, but it still had the idea of the Marines going into a hostile environment to fight monsters. I always loved that idea, and that's what got me into it. But it wasn't until I was a teenager when I realized that that movie was a sequel. I just thought it was a standalone thing. It wasn't until I was like 14 or 15 where I realized there's actually was a movie made before that in the 70s, Alien. And I watched that, and I was just as blown away, if not more so. One of those movies that just stands right out of time. Because if you watch any other movies in the 70s, it's like it stands out. It looks like a movie that was shot in their mid 2000s. It's so good looking, great dialogue, great pace, creepy as hell. So yeah, I would Alien and Aliens, again, a duo one. Number 5 would be 2001: A Space Odyssey. A lot of people put that as the best. I've seen that on many top lists where 2001 is number 1 greatest science fiction movie of all time. To some, I get it. Like, I totally get why that movie is ranked as among the best. I love it for many other reasons than most people do. I love it not just because it's a great looking movie, because obviously it's Stanley Kubrick. He's going to make a good looking movie. That's just. But also, one of the reasons why I really like 2001 is the fact that it just changes the structure of filmmaking completely. Up until that moment, you have, the first act, you get the hero. Second act, they go on their quest. Third act, they complete the quest, right? 2001 has not 3 acts, not 4 acts. It has 5 acts. You get this opener prologue act, 20 minutes of set millions of years in Earth's past, where we get to see our ancestors as ape people, and from there we just match cut jump to millions of years in the future. And now we're on this trip to the moon. We got the main guy going to the moon, and that's where they going to see what the future is like in this world. And then we get to see that they first find the monolith on the moon. And then again, hard cut, midway through the movie. We're at a different character, new characters altogether. Now we're in space. We're traveling to Jupiter. And these 2 astronauts, they're dealing with this evil AI, Hal. And so that's kind of its own little mini movie in the middle of the movie of 2 acts. You got the setup of the space astronauts, and then we got to kill Hal. So that's your own little 2-act little thing right there. And then the 5th act of the movie is, what I think the movie is the most memorable for is the Stargate sequence and heading into the infinite and going into that weird house, like kind of like a zoo cage that the main character finds himself in. And so it's just a movie that it's an unusual structure that I've never seen before. 5-act film. Who would have thought of that at the time? Since then, even, I haven't really seen a whole lot of movies that use a 5-act structure. I've seen movies that are like episodic, kind of like that, but this one kind of, something about it just all gels together as a 5-act structure. Anyway, so number 6, Jurassic Park. I think Jurassic Park is, what can you say about Jurassic Park that hasn't been said already? It's Jurassic Park. It's awesome. You get some of the best CGI effects. Even to this day, I look at Jurassic Park and I don't see a CG effect. I see a dinosaur. It hasn't aged. It's the characters are great, dialogue's great, just a fun ride all around. Again, an unusual structure movie. A lot of people don't talk about this. The movie has 4 acts. It starts off the setup of the events, and then we get to the island. We meet that there's in Act 2 there's these dinosaurs, and we get this Nedry guy, the Wayne Knight actor playing that saboteur, stealing all the alien DNA stuff. So we get that little act, and then half of the movie, we're halfway. We haven't really seen any kind of like tense action. Suddenly, T-Rex shows up. Now we're in Act 3, and it's a survival movie now. Before it was just a kind of a setup. Then it was kind of a mystery, survival, and then the 3rd act of the movie is an action movie. That's when the raptor, almost kind of a horror movie, honestly, is when the raptors are in the getting the kids in the kitchen and all that. Anyway, overall, fantastic movie. Okay, so now on to, what am I on? I guess I'm on 7 or 8. Anyway, my next one would be E.T. Once again, what can be said about E.T.? Beautiful movie, heartwarming, beautiful. Like the cinematography is beautiful. I think it's Spielberg's one of his best looking movies, because again, one of the movies that just stands out of time as it's just this, I mean, you can tell by the fashion that it was made in the 80s, but cinematography looks like it was something from like the 2000s. So wonderful, wonderful movie. Next would be number 9 would be Blade Runner. Now, Blade Runner has gone down on my list over the last couple of years. When I first discovered it, it was the greatest movie I'd ever seen. That's another movie that got me into filmmaking. When I was a teenager, I wanted to be a director. That's the movie that got me into directing. I want to be Ridley Scott. I want to be Steven Spielberg. And the movie obviously been spoken about 1,000 times of how beautiful it is and how hypnotic it is watching it. As I've gotten older, the reason why I have kind of put it down my list of just a bit is because I think the movie is a little self-indulgent. I find it way more about style over substance. The story is so basic. There's really not a whole lot going on. He just goes from one replicant to the next, and then in the end, kills the main bad guy, whatever, and then it kind of ends. It was only until recent cuts that the meaning became deeper. A lot of people forget that the original version of Blade Runner, there was no hint that Deckard was a replicant. That was later cuts where that kind of came in. In the original version of it, and we had that really lousy voiceover for Deckard and just weird pacing. And the first cut of the movie is not very good. Great visuals, but the movie itself is just bad. It wasn't really until recent cuts where it kind of came into its own and added all these extra themes and added stuff from Legend that he had shot later with a unicorn in there. So stuff that wasn't even in the original version is what made it better later down the road. So that's why I can't really put it up high on my list as I used to, because I just kind of found out that it took some time. It's not the original version of the movie that we love. The original version of the movie is what people associate with it. Or the original version. Basically, we don't associate what we love about Blade Runner with the original cut of the movie. We associate what we love about Blade Runner with the current cut, with the I think it's the final cut. And number 10. This one I did have a little bit of trouble figuring out what my number 10 would be. There's a lot of choices, but I went with something. All my previous ones were pretty contemporary stuff, so I decided to go with something more classic. Metropolis from 1927, and that one I think deserves a place on the top 10 list. I think it's the movie that started science fiction, really. I think it was the first really big science fiction movie, even though people didn't know what it was at the time because it was a German film. It didn't really gain its popularity until later years, but I do believe that most science fiction movies, especially that take place in the future, they did take a lot of inspiration from Metropolis. And I will be totally honest, I have not seen that movie for a while. I first saw it when I was in my teens, and I'm 30 now, so it's been a long time. But when I did remember seeing, I adored, and I thought it was one of the coolest movies from the 20s that I had seen up until that point. Because up until then, I had silent movies. I don't want to see silent movies. I want to see sound and action. But that was one that changed my perspective on the silent movies. So those are my top 10. Again, not very. The only one that stands out in there, I think, is Altered States, is my number one that most people don't put in theirs. Otherwise, the rest of them are pretty standard. People like to put those in the top 10. But there's a reason why those ones are in everyone's top 10, is because they are good movies. It's not a opinion. Those are just by the number of how many people love this movie. You just know that these are good movies. So I'm going to kind of go over some of the other science fiction movies that I like. Some of the ones that didn't make the top 10, but are still equally, they fit in a list somewhere. And I'm going to conclude some television shows in this list too, because I believe television is the sister art form of filmmaking. Because I think, especially in recent years, television has gotten pretty good. But even in the past, a lot of people forget that television is one of the Star Trek, Twilight Zone, all that really helped shape science fiction and fantasy and horror. So they belong on top 10 film lists, in my opinion. So I think I'll start with Twilight Zone. Twilight Zone is a phenomenal show. I think a lot of people have taken a lot of the episodes from Twilight Zone and expanded on them and made feature films. I think a lot of movies have been based on Twilight Zone episodes, whether acknowledging them or not. So we owe a lot to Twilight Zone and its unusual storytelling, its unusual ideas. I mean, some of the episodes in that show are pretty weird, pretty crazy, like stuff that nothing had been made up until that point. Um, so yeah, Twilight Zone, and then another one would be, of course, Star Trek. I'm not a Trekkie. I'm not someone who Star Trek is like this holy thing that should be like this high art form. I think it's okay. I think Star Trek's fine. The only reason I'm including in this list is basically because I owe it respect. I know that it was very influential on science fiction, and will totally. So I'll give it the respect that it deserves. I'll just say that. I'm not a huge fan of myself, just because it's not my thing, but I know why it is so popular. Other one would be skip forward 30, 40 years, Eternal Sunshine of a Spotless Mind. Another really odd movie that I really like. It was Michel Gondry did that one. And to this day, that's probably one of my favorite, aside from Matrix, like the cerebral kind of in dealing with the mind type movies. Very almost experimental with some of its scenes, using like stop motion and miniature effects and forced perspective. Really just a fun, interesting movie. And great pace, great writing, all around good one. Next one would be WALL-E. I think I saw that in the theater as a teenager and just being like, I had no idea animated movies can be this good, like this deep and this good. As like I was watching it not as a children's film, I was watching it just as a film. The way that there's just the cinematic nature of it, like they use like the zooming in, the dolly shots. They use anamorphic lenses, like digital anamorphic lenses, to shoot it to give it a kind of like oval bokeh. And just it's a cute story. It's half the movie is a silent film, no dialogue, and I think that was a bold choice for Pixar, or really any kid media, to have something like that, because kids, they need constant explaining and stimuli. But I think this was, they think that kids need that, but they were treating kids like mature audiences, and by showing them like show, don't tell. I think that was really cool. So I love WALL-E. Another one is The Abyss, James Cameron's 1989 Abyss. I find this movie brilliant. It is so pretty. The way that it's shot is beautiful, obviously. But I love the characters. I love the dialogue. The concept of it is so crazy. Just filming the whole movie underwater. And there's a documentary on YouTube about the making of this movie, and it's pretty great, because what they had to go through to make this movie as good as it was, you really see it in the footage, and it gets pretty crazy. But yeah, great special effects, great dialogue, great pacing, and the ending. For those of you who have not seen that movie, I'm not going to spoil it, but it goes into a place that you don't quite expect throughout the first couple parts of the narrative. And when you see that moment, it's just like, what? So Abyss, that's a underrated, phenomenal 80s film. I wouldn't even call it an 80s film. It doesn't. One of those movies that doesn't feel quite in the decade that it was made in. It feels more like something from like 1999 or early 2000s. It's just really great looking. What are some other ones? Oh, yeah. I just realized I need to retract something. I did not actually say my top 10. I only said my top 9. I forgot my number 3 movie in this whole my original top 10 list. I apologize. It was another duo one. So just anybody watching, just pretend that this is number 3. Okay? Terminator. How could I forgot about Terminator? Terminator 2 specifically. So Terminator 2 are in my number 3 or number 4 spot, whatever it was. But it's in my top 10. God, how did I forget about that? Yeah, sorry. Terminator. Terminator is such a fun. Terminator 2 specifically is kind of the same way that Aliens is. Like the first Terminator is great, fun, great debut for James Cameron. But Terminator 2 is a masterpiece. Once again, a movie that kind of follows an unusual 4-act structure. But kind of like Jurassic Park, where it starts off, it introduces some effects that no one had seen before. Watching some of the effects today, they still look great. And thankfully, they did not do a lot of CG. The CG that they did use, they used it just right. They didn't go overboard on it. They didn't want it. They didn't want to. They didn't do anything they couldn't perfect. They only picked the perfect moments that needed CGI, and the rest was done practically, which phenomenal. So Terminator 2, masterpiece. Terminator, another great science fiction movie. Sorry. So that little tangent there. But yeah, so my top, so just to clarify, I'll kind of go over my top 10 movies right here. So number 1 is Altered States. Number 2, Star Wars. Number 3 is The Matrix. Number 4 is Terminator. Number 5 is Alien. Number 6, Space Odyssey. What number am I on? I'm getting confused. I'm just going to not say the numbers. I'm just going to say, okay, Star Wars, Matrix, Terminator, Alien, 2001, Altered States, Jurassic Park, E.T., Blade Runner, Metropolis. I think that's all of them. I can't number and list at the same time, but those are my top 10. Okay, let me get back to the my special mentions list. Now that I got the top 10 out of the way, back to my special mentions list. Okay, actually, okay, Clockwork Orange. Once again, Stanley Kubrick, kind of science fiction. It's more of a crime drama, but it does take place in a kind of a dystopian future, so I'm including it. But it doesn't really deal with technology or anything futuristic. It just more deals with just kind of like the urban environment and the morals of the youth being corrupted. But it's a great movie on its own. I'm not quite sure if I would truly classify as a science fiction, but I'm just for the sake of our list, I'm gonna put it in there. So yeah, Clockwork Orange, very weird movie, very very heavy. I don't recommend it for anybody who's not really, comfortable with rape scenes or weird sex scenes or violence. Movie's not as graphic as its reputation would hold, but it still is one that's not. It's not a pleasant movie to watch, but it's still entertaining. I think there's a lot of cool scenes, a lot of funny scenes actually. Movie's kind of a dark comedy, and I think that's why some of those scenes that are disturbing don't hit as hard as they would if they were portraying them seriously, because there's that kind of like edge of dark comedy. That's it's just a staple of Stanley Kubrick. He loved to have dark comedy in his stories. So yeah, Clockwork Orange is on the list. What's next? The Thing, 1982. The Thing, John Carpenter's The Thing. Great movie, fun, crazy special effects, great characters, great writing, great pacing, very very gory. It's one of the grossest movies that is probably on this list in terms of science fiction. It's probably the most brutal of the movies. A lot of people put it higher up on lists. I get, not so much for me because there are moments of it that I do feel kind of hokey. Some of the effects are as great as some of them are. There are some moments that do look pretty ridiculous. Like there's this moment where one of the characters gets like his head splits open and it bites onto one of the characters and he starts swinging around. The body that he's got in his mouth is obviously a dummy, and like a really, really shoddy dummy too. Like it looks ridiculous. And in some aspects, it almost looks like it was intentional to be like just kind of campy, which if it is, then that's fine. I can get that. But I couldn't tell. It was hard to tell if that movie was meant to be hokey or if it was those effects were trying to be serious. And weirdly, it has to do with the lighting. Like some of the lighting in the movie, it's lit very like spot on. Like an Alien, when you see like the creature, it being like this kind of like this really kind of hazy darkness. But in The Thing, they would just everything is front lit, like right in the light. You can see everything, and it does kind of you can see some of the seams of the effects in there, and that's kind of gives some of it away. So that's why I wouldn't really put it as like a true masterpiece, but it is still a very fun movie, very entertaining, and if you like gross stuff, I would definitely say check it out. What's some other ones? Okay, I have not seen this movie, but I think I should include it on the list anyway because I've seen it a bunch of other places, and I'm going to recommend it not because I've seen it, just because everyone else does. Solaris, the Tarkovsky film. I think it was 1972. Again, I have not seen the movie, so I can't comment on it. But I do know that it's in a lot of other people's top science fiction lists. So go check it out, and so will I. And maybe I'll make a video of it in the future. We'll see. Okay, back to my list. Brazil. Terry Gilliam's 1985 Brazil is. I remember watching that one and I saw it on television and being terrified by it. I had no idea what I was watching. I had never seen anything quite like it, and I just felt it was made by some demented person, or like I was watching something I shouldn't have been watching, because it was just so unusual from what I'd seen. Not because the movie's disturbing. There's really no disturbing scenes in the movie. There's no really graphic violence, but just the way it was shot, the way it was paced, something about it just felt like a nightmare to me. And when I got older, I watched the whole movie again, and it's like, oh, okay, now I get it. It's supposed to be kind of off key. I mean, Terry Gilliam is just, that's what he does. He's a master at making the ridiculous seem terrifying and vice versa. And I would say, while I'm on the topic of Terry Gilliam, I would also say 12 Monkeys, as I think maybe even better movie. I would say maybe they're equally, but one of the reasons why I like 12 Monkeys specifically is just because of how he takes the style that he's normally known for, with kind of like that weird comedic edge, and he just tosses it out. It's like, nope, I'm going to go straight for dark. That movie is bleak, and I love it, because it's not very often that you get a mainstream movie like that. Because that wasn't like an independent movie. That was from a studio, and it had. I'm not going to spoil it for you, but it gets pretty grim. It's one of the most grim, like, mainstream movies I think I've seen in a very long time. So yeah, Terry Gilliam, Brazil, and 12 Monkeys, great science fiction. Let's see some of the other ones. Oh, District 9, great modern one. I wouldn't even say, at this point it's not even modern. That's what, 12 years ago? But that's kind of like the last really great science fiction movie, I think. Like, I remember watching it back then, and kind of, even as I was sitting in the theater watching, like, this is a classic. I'm right now currently experiencing a classic in the making. And I guess I was right, because people still talk about it to this day. People still love it. It was just such a jarring change of pace between what we normally had seen up until that point. Because normally we had just seen like Transformers movies, The Matrix, but this one was just like this gritty, grounded in realism, and the special effects, the CG for the prawns. Oh God, it's great. It's intense. Very violent movie. And again, if you're into violent movies, this one, my mom watched it and she liked it, so maybe, I don't know. But yeah, definitely check out District 9. Minority Report, Steven Spielberg. There's another list of Steven Spielberg science fiction movies that I'll kind of list that are great. I think number one obviously was E.T., but also Minority Report, Close Encounters, and AI. And I would kind of argue War of the Worlds on that list too, but I would say I was not a fan of story aspects of that movie, so I won't get into that one. But I'll start with Minority Report. That's another one of those mainstream movies that goes into some dark territories. Goes into drug abuse, child abduction, murder. It gets pretty dark. It's heavy, because Spielberg kind of went through a phase in the '90s where he started getting some pretty dark, like Saving Private Ryan. One of the most violent movies ever. It was weird how people equate Steven Spielberg to like this family film director when he's done some of the most violent movies of mainstream cinema. You know, Saving Private Ryan, Jaws, Raiders of the Lost Ark. I mean, one of the most gory explosion, head exploding, melting. Just like he had some dark. And then Poltergeist with the face ripping thing. Spielberg, he's got some demons. I don't think he's kind of letting those out in his older movies. I think now he's kind of settled down, but I think he definitely had some dark places in his earlier work. Anyway, so yeah, Minority Report. It's a great, gritty crime sci-fi. That's what other one was AI, and I think this movie is so underrated. I think it's beautiful. It's so well shot. It's sad. The ending of this movie is devastating. I can't finish this movie. every time I watch it, I'll kind of cut off right at the quarter way mark because the last scene of the movie is just it's too much for me. But it's a great movie, beautifully shot, beautifully paced, um, and yeah, check that one out. And then Close Encounters. 1977 was another one that inspiration to me. Love that one. That's just a classic, good sci-fi. Not a whole lot to say about it, other than just it's a solid movie. It's fun special effects towards the end of the movie that I think Douglas Trumbull did the special effects. We went on to do Blade Runner. You can kind of see some of the early style of Blade Runner in there with some of the light effects of the spacecrafts. So yeah, Close Encounters, that's a great one. Let's see. I'm kind of getting to how many here am I? I'm at. I'll stop at 20. At 20, however many that is. No, I think I'm at 20. What about 20 now? Actually, I'll add one more. This one, a lot of people put this higher on the list. I'm adding this again to the list because out of obligation, not because I particularly think this is like the best movie ever, but I understand why people like it to an extent. I think it is a little bit overrated, but I like it anyway. Back to the Future. I think it's a very firmly set in the 1985. This is a very 80s movie. Some science fiction movies they feel timeless. This one, it's in the 80s. It's a movie from the 80s. The effects don't always hold up. The look of the movie is kind of flat. A lot of blocky lighting. The dialogue is fun and direction is fun. But just something about the first one just doesn't like ring classic to me. It rings classic 80s sci-fi, sure, but it's just a great movie altogether. I would say it's fine. I'd say it's a nice movie. I would say show it to your kids. It's a nice family film. But I think out of the Back to the Future franchise, my favorite of the movies is the second one. I think that one still has the same style, but it goes into some more wild territories. And the effects are better in that one, and it's just more fun, I think. So yeah, that's my top. However many, I've lost track of how many I've listed, 20, whatever, science fiction movies. And if anybody wants to give me a list of things that they'd like to do later on, go ahead. I'm interested for ideas. And maybe next time I'll do fantasy, or I'll do drama, horror, all that stuff. But until then, hope you guys enjoyed this. Hope you guys like some of my ideas. And if you have any other suggestions for good science fiction specifically, post them in the comments. Give me a like, subscribe, and we'll see you next time.